Here we go. The good news is, it's not good news, it's bad news, but for me it's good news, is that Rabbi Blooming is out of town, as far as I know. So it's not like we have 15 minutes to learn. We'll have a regular shiur, even though we're starting it late. Part of the reason I'm late is because I usually give a shiur in the morning in my home on Zoom. That shiur usually lasts half an hour. This morning's shiur lasted an hour and a quarter. So I haven't figured out yet how to be in two places at one time. So it leaks, it hemorrhages someplace else. We're in the very bottom of page 287, okay? I think yesterday was a very good shiur. I don't mean to toot my own horn. It says, "Ois gekommen gut." It's a good geret. The Eibishter puts words. There's a lashon from the Rebbe Marash. The Rebbe Marash said, "Reden darf man reden leiten Ede. Und Atzumus muss geht zu wette." You speak to the people. The Eibishter gives you words. Yesterday, the Eibishter gave words. We're talking about Parshas Re'eh and Elul and Tshuva. And how a Baal Tshuva is higher than a tzaddik. This was how the conversation went. The Baal Tshuva is higher than a tzaddik. Why? Because the tzaddik has control over the present and the future. The Baal Tshuva has a control over the past. And at length, yesterday we talked about the whole idea of Tshuva being retroactive at length. Okay, so let's read the last line on page 287, which we did read yesterday, but I'm reading it again as a segue for today. When you speak about how Tshuva is higher than Tzaddik, and Baal Tshuva is higher than, I don't know what you want to call him, Baal Tzaddik, yeah. It's not only that the Avedas are erased, but the Avedas are erased. And the Avedas become mitzvahs, but moreover, when we have mitzvahs that came from Avedas, they are even on a higher level. The Avedas that become mitzvahs are higher than mitzvah stam. Turn the page. Top of 288. And the Rebbe explains. A person does mitzvahs, yeah? And of course, mitzvah has a kavanah. How you do the mitzvah, the spirit of the mitzvah. And therefore, even though everybody's doing mitzvahs, the spirit of the mitzvah changes from person to person. Now let's keep in mind that when a person does a mitzvah, the Alter Rebbe brings in Tanya, mitzvah b'lei kavana keguf b'lei nishama. If you do a mitzvah without kavana, it's like a body without a soul. But at least you have a body. Kavana b'lei mitzvah. If you have a kavana, no mitzvah, you have nothing. It doesn't exist. So the most important thing is the mitzvah. This says Be'emes in Tanya Perek Mem, chapter 40. But after all, the kavanah changes the mitzvah. It changes the mitzvah in terms of the person's experience. It changes the mitzvah in terms of what happens to the mitzvah spiritually after we do the mitzvah, and so on. And therefore, mitzvahs have different qualities based on kavanah. Yesh zochias, there are some mitzvahs, shehem be'efen the mitzvahs anoshim melumoda b'lvad. The person does them out of habit. I'm used to it. I do these mitzvahs every day. What do they call it? Rote. Mechanical. You're doing the same thing over and over again. This is what you do. So you're doing mitzvahs, but they have no neshama. Like the famous story from the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov walked into a shul in Frankfurt, with a big, beautiful synagogue, and he told the congregants that he can't daven in this shul. So he said to him, "Why can't you daven in this shul?" So he said, "Because this shul is full of asias of Torah and Tefillah. It's full of letters of davening and learning. There's no room for me. There's no room." So they told the Baal Shem Tov, "Thank you for the compliment that our shul is full of Eisa, Teira, Tefillah." So the Baal Shem Tov said it's not a compliment. Because it says in Zayah that when you learn Teira and do mitzvahs, it's supposed to parcha. It's supposed to rise up. But it also says in Zayah, the person does mitzvahs. And they have no chayas, they have no ava, they have no bren, kalt. Light, they stay where they are. So he says, the reason I can come into the shul is because your shul is full of the aces of Teira Tefillah, because leiporcha liyela. That's what happens when you do things mechanically. There's even a possibility where you're doing mitzvahs even on a lower level. What could be lower in doing mitzvahs mechanically? It says in Tanya, there's a lower level of doing mitzvahs. Sha'ideze meisef keach beklipas lefisha. You add keach to klipa for the moment. If you do the mitzvah with a negative kavanah, if you do the mitzvah with zero kavanah, so it's not going up and it's not going down. If you do a mitzvah with a negative kavanah, I guess on some level you would call it a mitzvah abba ba'aveda. So the Rebbe says lefisha, it's added in klipa. Says the Rebbe mekomokam arehim zachis. This is also in Tanya Perek Mem. That when a person does a mitzvah is godliness. You have to fix the kavanah, but the mitzvah is a godly thing. So the point of the Rebbe is that there's a lot of levels. There's low levels, there's lower levels, there's high levels, there's higher levels, says the Rebbe on them. If you were to make a list, and the Rebbe doesn't give us a full list, if you were to make a list of all the different levels of a mitzvah which is Yed Lefishat Klipa, a mitzvah which is mitzvah nashim ilumada, a mitzvah that's done with a tmimus, a mitzvah done with a avayira tivim, a mitzvah done with avayira sichlet, a mitzvah done with madrega merkava, and then you would say, what about a mitzvah that came from an aveda? So the Rebbe says, Hazochis shenase mayadei hatshuva. The mitzvahs that form through doing tshuva for avedas are higher than any other kavanah of a mitzvah. Why? Kivan shenase mayadei tshuva mi'ahava. Because they're done through tshuva. But what kind of tshuva? A tshuva that's done out of love. And I'm going to explain to you what it means, the tshuva done out of love, in a moment. The Gemara says, Shebishvil hafichas deinis lezochis, to change an aveda into a mitzvah, rather than to erase the aveda, or to make the aveda into a shegi, to make an aveda into a mitzvah. Loi maspik tshuva meyira, tshuva out of fear is not sufficient. Ela yesh tzedach b'tshuva meyava dafka, you must have a tshuva that's done with love. And it says in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe says this in Tanya, that tshuva meyava mayomka deliba, tshuva out of love, from the depths of one heart, bracket, shehu avodah shemitzat pnimius halev, this is a tshuva coming from the inner heart, and the inner heart means that this love is higher than the mind. You know, there's a love that comes from the seichel, love that comes from the mind, and then there's love that comes from the soul. That's called pnimius halev. This is not an ordinary love, this is a love from the neshama. Ubepnimius halev gufen, the inner heart itself, hapnimius shel beis hamadregis. It's the pnimius of the pnimius halev. But ahava rabba, with a great intense love, v'chashika, and a longing v'chuli. So the Gemara says it, and the Alter Rebbe qualifies it. Sha'atshuva me'ava rabba zu, when you do tshuva with so much love. Omru, this is what the Gemara says, shes deinis nas like yizochis, avedas become like mitzvahs. Why? Hoyel, because v'ayidei zeh ba'al yava rabba zu. Through the Aveda itself, you came to this great love, which I'm going to explain in a moment. So the Rebbe finishes, Harei moving, it's understood. Shehem, that mitzvahs that came from Avedas, that are transformed into mitzvahs, those mitzvahs are, or those zochiyas are, be'madrege, nailas, be'yosh, on the highest possible level. It's lamaila, it's even higher, gam be'yazochiyas, even from the merits of tzaddikim gemurim, of perfect tzaddikim. You know why? Because avidosam is apitam v'das, their service to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, after all, reasonable. Okay, so let's have a conversation. Let's have a shmooze. This is a conversation which I've had in the past. I've been teaching here more than 25 years, which is pretty crazy. Beis Medrash and Oshim Banas Pasha, this series of Shurim is going on, Mamish. We started the week of Gimel Tammuz, Nun Dalet, 26 years ago. Ariella started before, but I started then. And I'm still doing it. To all of us. Let's start with this, okay? There's two things. There's tshuva tata'ah and tshuva ila'ah. Lower tshuva and higher tshuva. There's tshuva miyira and tshuva mi'ahava. Tshuva out of fear and tshuva out of love. Those are not aligned. They're not the same. Tshuva tata'ah is not necessarily tshuva miyira. Tshuva ilah is not necessarily tshuva mi'ava. They're two different things. Now, I think that sometimes they're correlated, but you have to understand that the lower tshuva and the higher tshuva, and tshuva out of fear and tshuva out of love, are not the same. So I'm going to talk about each one. Now, I'm giving you a lecture. We read a few paragraphs of Sicha, and now I'm going to babble. Okay? What's tshuva tata and what's tshuva ilah? So I told this to you yesterday. I told it to you 1,000 times. Tshuva tata is running away from sin. Tshuva ilah is running to Hashem. Tshuva means return. I'm out of line. I lost my way, right? I lost my way. I have a relationship with the Eibishter and I lost my way. Now, while we're talking about losing our way, the most tragic, the most sad, the most painful losing away is what they call in Yiddish as men werd gleichgültig. When you don't care anymore. You know, a lot of times a person loses his way or her way so much, it's not like they don't want to do the right thing. I'm a lost cause. And that's very tragic. Really the essence, the heart of hearts of tshuva is you never quit. I made a mistake one time, I made a mistake 100 times, I made a mistake 1,000 times. I'm in a relationship with the Eibishter and I don't quit. When you say I'm lost, that's the worst. So this is just a parenthesis. Yeah, a person has to return. That's why it's called tshuva, because tshuva means returning. So returning from a lost way means fixing sin. I did things wrong, I have to fix them. So the quotable quote, the phrase that pays is, there is a sin and there is a sinner. What's the difference between a sin and a sinner? An aveda and an avaryan in Hebrew. If you do an aveda one time, that's a sin. But most people don't do avedas once. We don't do a lot of avedas. But the ones that we do, we tend to repeat. Why? Because we lose control, you see. I did something wrong, it's terrible. And no one is chas v'sholom trying to minimize it. But when you do it again and again, it becomes a bad habit. And you, so to speak, lose control. And to regain that control is very, very difficult. That's tshuva. Tshuva means for whatever reason, I lost my way. And I lost my way in a way that's called in Tanya, pagam. Pagam means my nefesh is dirty, my nefesh has a blemish. And this isn't some mystical, esoteric, lumdish idea. It's a very practical idea. A pagam means today I don't have as much koyach than I had yesterday because I did an aveda. I want to stop. I want to be the right thing. I don't want to do the wrong thing. But I have a collection of bad habits which are very difficult for me to overcome. You understand? That's tshuva tata. Tshuva tata means to fix the control that the aveda has over me. To gain back the elekeichem. Aveda seichem should not be mavdel b'neinu lebein elekein. Hashem should, the sin shouldn't be a barrier and a wall between us and our own godliness. That's tshuva tata. Now that's not easy. If you heard what I just said, you'll understand that it's not easy, right? To say I won't do it again is not hard. To say I won't do it again and mean it is a little bit harder. To say I won't do it again and mean it and not do it again is awesome. And it requires hard work. Hard work. Not b'gedolos. It's not about jumping off roofs and making a lot of noise. It's about discipline and self-control and kabbalah sale. Really, it's about all of those things. This is called tshuva tata. What's tshuva law? Tshuva law is a presumption, a mystical presumption. You know what presumption is? We assume, we imagine, we decide it. We get past it. The tshuva law presumption is that if you're in love with God, you don't sin. If you're infatuated, if you're busy with Hashem, you don't do anything wrong. When you forget about Hashem, it's something wrong. In other words, every sin is two sins. Every aveda is two avedas. There's what I did and how I come to do it. How does a person come to do an aveda? How does a person come to do an aveda? And the answer is they're not paying attention. The answer is there's a lack of chayas, lack of vibrancy, vitality, passion, energy, right? So there's two tshuvas. If every aveda is two avedas, every tshuva is two tshuvas. Aveda and tshuva number one is I have to correct the pagam, the lasting effect of it. Like I said before, we're not talking about sin, we're talking about sinner, what the aveda does to the person. So when you're doing tshuva, there's tshuva on two levels. The first level of tshuva. Can I bother you to go into the other room, please? Do you mind? We have a class, please. The first level of tshuva is I have to regain control over that thing that I lost control. And the second thing is I got to get in love with Hashem. I have to be involved with the Eibishter. If I'm involved with the Eibishter, I won't sin. If I'm thinking about the Eibishter all day long. You know, the Rebbe said once to Matcha Talashevsky that on the Bima it says, Da lefnei mi ata emid. That a person has to always remember that he's standing in front of the Eibishter. Da lefnei mi ata emid. You're standing in front of the Eibishter. So if you're in the Eibishter's presence, it's not possible that you should sin. That's called tshuva law. So in short words, tshuva tata means to correct the wrong. Tshuva law means to get involved with the Eibishter. There shouldn't be any wrong. Now, parenthesis, since I'm making speeches, we'll parenthesize the speech. The Rebbe teaches us that we should do tshuva law before tshuva tata. In Tanya it says, first you do the lower tshuva, then you do the higher tshuva. And the Rebbe says, reverse the order. First, connect to the Eibishter. And from that renewed connection to the Eibishter, the tshuva of regaining control will be positive. It's the Rebbe's approach. Or maybe even more, just do tshuva law. Though a Yid wants to be a Yid, he should be connected to HaKadosh Baruch. Now let's go to the other thing. What's the tshuva miyireh and tshuva mi'ahava? Tshuva out of fear and tshuva out of love. Tshuva miyireh means I'm doing tshuva because I don't want to be punished. I'm doing tshuva because I don't want to be separate from Hashem. I'm doing tshuva because I don't want to be embarrassed. Emma says embarrassed is already on the line. So in other words, tshuva tata and tshuva ilah describe what I'm doing. Tshuva miyira and tshuva mi'ava describe why I'm doing. So a person does tshuva miyira. He does tshuva out of fear. He's afraid of being punished. He's afraid of being separate from the Eibishter. So he does tshuva. So you have tshuva miyira tata and tshuva miyira ilah. In other words, I can do tshuva out of fear. A, correct the wrong, and B, to return to the Eibishter. The motivation for both of these tshuvas is yirah. You understand? It's yirah. It's fear. What's tshuva miyava? Tshuva miyava means that I love the Eibishter so much that I'm therefore doing tshuva. My relationship with the Eibishter is so strong. I love him so much. Doing tshuva. So tshuva miyahava applies this tshuva tata miyava, fixing my wrong because I love the Eibishter. And this tshuva ilah miyava, I'm reconnecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu out of love. So tshuva tata and tshuva ilah and tshuva miyira and tshuva miyava are not synonymous the way I understand it. Now here's where it gets tricky. Here's where it gets hard. Okay? You look in Chassidus, in the very beginning of the Samach Vav, yeah, when people are still paying attention. The first page, second page of Samach Vav. The Rebbe Rashab says, what is the trademark of a Baal Tshuva? What is the trademark of a Baal Tshuva? What is the trademark of a Baal Tshuva? The Rebbe Rashab says this in the very first pages of the Samach Vav. First page, again, if you have an old print or a new print, first page, second page, mamish the beginning. Before anything happens, before the Bachim start learning on the bottom of page 3, where he talks about Dinim and Tachtainim. This is before that. In mamish the beginning of the Samach Vav. He says the difference between a tzaddik and a Baal Tshuva is that tzaddik is motivated by his desire for Hashem. A Baal Tshuva is motivated by his desire to get away from evil. I'll say it again. The tzaddik is motivated because he wants a connection to Hashem. The Rasha is motivated because he's running away from evil. And the Rebbe Rashab brings the Gemara. This is a very, very famous Gemara. The Rebbe Rashab brings the Gemara. That the Gemara says a klal. It says in Chumash, Vayiyere Vayivek. When the Eibishter created the world, first there was night and then there was morning. So on this pasuk, with the help of some other things, the Gemara tells you a rule. Bereisha chasheicha v'hoda nahira. In the order of things, first there's darkness and then there's light. First there's chasheicha, first there's choshech, and then there's a. So the Rebbe Rashab brings this and he explains, what does this mean? What does it mean in Chassidus? Bereisha chasheicha v'hoda nahira. And the Rebbe Rashab gives you a rule of life, a rule of creation, an axiom of reality, which is interesting. And the axiom of reality is Lav Kodim Lahain. You know what Lav Kodim Lahain means? no is stronger than yes. Always. If two people are motivated, one has a positive motivation and the other one has a negative motivation. If one is running to gold and the other is running from fire, the one running from fire runs stronger than the one who's running to gold. Because you cannot run to Hain. You can't run to a yes the way you run away from a no. You understand? You can't run. Could you sit? Do you mind sitting where I can't see you? Please. I'm sorry. Thank you. Until right, perfect. Yeah. Yeah. You can't run to a treasure the way you run to save your life. So the Rebbe Rashab says in the beginning of Samach Vov, you know what makes the Baal Tshuva stronger than the Tzaddik? The Baal Tshuva is running from evil, the Tzaddik is running to good. Now here's the problem. Ava is evil or good, huh? Loving Hashem is what? Is a negative motivation or a positive motivation? I'm asking you. Fear is a negative motivation. I don't want to be cut off. I don't want to be... But love is a positive motivation. Here we have a tricky thing. We have a tshuva me'ava. I'm running away from negative out of love. There's a dichotomy here. It's a paradox. It's a coexistence of opposites. The Baal Tshuva that makes the Aveda into a mitzvah is running from evil. He's running from evil. And because he's running from evil, he has this advantage that's called no is stronger than yes. Darkness is before life. Light. David made first day, night and then day. No, in the creation, no is stronger than yes. This Baal Tshuva is running from evil with an urgency of love. In other words, this is not a normal love. It's not a love Hashem for what Hashem gives me. If he loves Hashem for what Hashem gives me, that's a tzaddik, it's a positive motivation. It's a love of Hashem of, I can't possibly be separated from this. In other words, on the one hand, it's negative, I'm running from evil. On the other hand, it's positive. What is the motivation to run from evil? How can I be cut off from this? It's a weird anomaly, it's a weird combination of opposites, you understand? You understand? So let me review everything I said. Number one, there's a lower tshuva and there's a higher tshuva. They're defined by what we're doing. Running from sin and running to God. Number two, there's a motivation for tshuva. Tshuva out of fear and tshuva out of love. Tshuva out of love is a very strange combination. I'm motivated by something negative to a positive extent. Or you want to say it backwards. I'm motivated by something positive to a negative extent. My relationship with the Eibishter, not I want it. I can't lose it. I want it as a positive motivation. I can't lose it as a combination of positive and negative. The tshuva has an infinity. The infinity of the tshuva is Avad Abba, I love Hashem very much. But not I love Hashem very much because Hashem is very good. I love Hashem very much because I can't be separate. So it has the advantage of no and the advantage of yes. You understand? The no is I can't become separated. And the yes is the extent to which I can't become separated because this is real. Because this is emes. Because I need this. It's not just what I'm going away from. I'm going away from something bad because of something good. So it has the intensity of running away from something bad and the richness, if you will, of the bad is being separated from something absolutely good. So this is what's weird about tshuva me'ava Rabba. So it says in Tanya, and the source of it is a Gemara in Yuma that the Rebbe brings, that the idea, I told you yesterday, 3 levels, right? One is that the Aveda becomes like an accident, like a mistake, shegin. The second is the Aveda is totally erased. And the third is the Aveda becomes a mitzvah. This third level of the Aveda becomes a mitzvah is motivated by this paradox called tshuva me'ava. Running from evil with a positive thrust. Or a positive thrust that's motivated from running from evil. So the Alter Rebbe says a gewaltige word. If I am doing tshuva, because the Aveda is bad, but what makes the Aveda bad is that it's separating me from the Eibishter, from something good. The Aveda is the reason for this. If I didn't do an Aveda, I would serve Hashem out of love. I wouldn't serve Hashem with the negative motivation of not allowing myself to become separated. If, on the other hand, I did do an Aveda, Rahman Litzlan, and I want to return to the Eibishter, because I don't want to be separated from the Eibishter, and my desire to return to the Eibishter, because I don't want to be separated from the Eibishter, is because I can't be separated from him, from Ahava, that's the highest thing possible. It's the Maila of Ahava and the Maila of Shlila, the Maila of negative. I'm running away from evil because I can't be separated from this good. Says the Rebbe, no Aveda, no Tshuva. If there's no Aveda, there's Ahava. I'm connected. Because of the Aveda, the Ahava is now enhanced by a love, by a negativity. Says the Rebbe, this is why the Gemara says Aveda becomes a mitzvah. A guy didn't Aveda. But girls don't do Avedas, we know that. Guys do Avedas, yeah. You're married to Avedas. Okay, so we should have Nazal Yidin Zon Chuvaton, and the Ikkiris we should be Sameach. I'm telling you, the biggest problem today is not Avedas. It's I can't do it. Giving up. So many people say it's too hard, it's too schwer. I'm such an imperfect Jew, why bother? And the answer is, you never quit. That's really the essence of tshuva. You never quit. You keep trying and you keep trying and you keep trying and you never quit. Anyway, says the Rebbe, you know why the Baal Tshuva is higher than the Tzaddik? Because the Aveda is the reason for the Tshuva. The intensity, the property of Tshuva, that on the one hand has a love about it. I don't want to be separate. On the other hand has a fear. I can't allow myself to become separate, and I'm running to him with this urgency. Why does the Aveda become a mitzvah? Let me slow down. I sort of got ahead of myself. If a person doesn't Aveda, they tshuva, the Aveda should go away. Why should Aveda become a mitzvah? It doesn't make sense. You know, the old adage, Chayta Nishka, the sinner should merit. There's a famous Gemara. Just 1 second. Okay, I'm sorry about that, yeah? There's a Gemara, one of those very, very famous Gemaras. The Gemara says, this is a famous Gemara. The Gemara says there was a guy, a fellow, whose name was Rebbe Elazar ben Dordaya. Called Rebbe Elazar ben Dordaya. Elazar ben Dordaya had a big neshama, and he had a gigantic Yetzer Hara. He had a Yetzer Hara to match. And the Chazal say that he was the biggest Rasha. He never missed a chance to do an Aveda. The Gemara describes him as a person who never missed an opportunity. Can you imagine never missing an opportunity? In other words, he was taka he wasn't angry at God. He was a pleasure seeker. But Chas v'Shalom, you should miss one pleasure. You had to eat every type of cake. You understand? Every candy. And he did tshuva at the end of his life. He heard a voice came from heaven, which most people, even tzaddikim, don't hear, that spoke about tshuva, and he decided to tshuva. And he went through one of the most important discoveries in life. The Gemara tells the story, but the Gemara has to be studied, and it's not so hard to understand, but it's something to think about. He asked for help to do tshuva. He asked the heaven, he asked the earth, he asked the land. It means he asked the malachim for help. And each malach, each entity that he asked for help told him, you want us to help you do tshuva? We have our own Avedas which we must do tshuva for. If I'm going to engage in Avedas tshuva, I got to do tshuva for me first. It's a very interesting story. A Yid who did every Aveda he could have done. I'm sure he missed a few, but they were not available. If there was an Aveda available, he did it. And then at the end of his life, he decides to do tshuva. And he asks for help. He seeks support. You want to do something real, you need help. And all those who support he seeks say, if we're going to do tshuva, we're going to do tshuva for ourselves first. And he discovers that even though he may be a bigger sinner, no one's perfect. And he makes the ultimate discovery. The ultimate discovery is that tshuva is lonely. Tshuva tutman alein. You don't do tshuva in company. There's no chabura for tshuva. Tshuva you do lonely. So he goes to a private place. The Gemara says he went between the mountains, the hills, all by himself. And he put his head between his knees and he started to cry until he literally died. He died kipshute. He died kipshute. Imagine? And the Alter Rebbe brings in Sof Perek Mem Gimel that this is Ava before Yireh. That's the chap. Ava before Yireh. Ava before Yireh. He died, he did cry until he died. Imagine. Our Rebbe, Zol Gesundsein, spoke once a Sicha. I remember I was at the Fabrengen. I remember the Rebbe saying it, and then it came out later in the Mugadik Sicha. Tov Mem Ches, maybe Lech Lecha, where the Rebbe said that Rabbi Elazar ben Derdaya opened up a new level of tshuva. He opened up a new pathway to tshuva. There's a Gemara that says that David HaMelech, who kam Eila shel tshuva, David HaMelech taught the world how to do tshuva. The Eibishter forced him to do an Aveda, which was not Lefi Erkei. David could not have done such an Aveda. And the only reason the Eibishter took away his free will and got him to do this terrible Aveda is that he should do tshuva. And in David HaMelech doing tshuva, he taught us how to do tshuva. The Gemara says, who come Eilo shel tshuva. There's different Maimorei Chazal about how you translate O. Okay? So the Rebbe said, just like David HaMelech was Pesach, a new Pesach, opened up a new channel of tshuva. Says the Rebbe, Elazar ben Derdaya lived in the time of the second Beis HaMikdash, much later, also opened up a new channel for tshuva. And the Rebbe said, but because he was the first, he died. After Rabbi Elazar ben Derdaya, it's possible for a Yid to do tshuva on the same madrega of Rabbi Elazar ben Derdaya and remain in a shama b'guf. That's what the Rebbe said. He opened up the pathway of tshuva, and the only way this tshuva could be reached is through Mesiras HaNefesh, Hepech HaChayim. After him, we have stories of other people like that, the Ma'aseh of Yosef Balagola, people who did tshuva on the same madrege, and they remained in the shama b'guf because he opened up a new channel. But then the Gemara finishes. The Gemara finishes with these words: Bocha Rebbe v'Omar Yesh Mi Shekeinei Lome B'Shah Achas. He lived in the times of Rebbe, Rabbeinu HaKadosh. I guess that's after the Churban Habayis, times of the Tanoim, but after the destruction of the second Beis HaMikdash. So Rebbe, who would author the Mishnah, cried, and he said, apparently you can acquire El Mabon in an hour. Yesh Mi, there is someone that Keinei Lome who acquires El Mabon B'Shah Achas in 1 hour. And of course, there's a lot of interpretations for why Rebbe cried. What was he crying about? Here's a Yid who did tshuva, a big Rasha. The Gemara calls him a big Rasha. And then he does tshuva till the Goa Bebchi, and the Shama left his goof. And Rabbeinu HaKadosh says you can acquire a Mabon in an hour. Was he crying? So there's different interpretations. One is that he cried tears of simcha, tears of joy, that it's never too late. And the other is he cried, as they say in the culture, it's not fair. A Yid serves Hashem his whole life, comes again a Yid HaRosha, an Avaryan, and boom, in a second he's higher than him. Why? Because this rare combination of positive and negative, which is the tshuva law, the tshuva me'avarabba of this Baal tshuva, is based on the Aveda. The Aveda brings them to this place. Chas v'sholom, for a person to say, I'm going to do Aveda so that I can do tshuva for them. The Gemara says, Echta v'yoshev. But la'achar ha'maisa, post facto, the Aveda brings to the tshuva, and this puts the Baal tshuva hard and negative to the extent that the Rebbe cries. The Rebbe cries about it. You understand? Says the Rebbe, v'zui ma'al chayei. Now you understand Elu. Shebechol yem shabei. Just give me 1 second. Every day in Elul, Shebekeiche shel Yehudi, a Yid has the ability, Lifel, to influence, to affect, Shayiyah etz lei, he should possess, Tachlis hatev, the ultimate of good, Gam b'negei laha'over, also about the past. Now, Chayei Shalom, king in the field, tshuva, yeah, but the tshuva that he's describing here sounds quite rare. The Rebbe forgot that this is not so easy, and yeah, anybody can do it. If you do tshuva, anybody can do this tshuva. It wasn't ben Derdaya. Leidak b'chedesh Elul atzmei, not just in the month of Elul itself, Elagam b'chol hashana she'avar, but in the whole year. Moreover, v'gam b'chol hashana ma'koidmeis, going back retroactively the whole past of this person, meyem heyesei le'ish, from the time they became an ish, and I guess the opposite of ish is isha. The tshuva is retroactive. We can heal and become a new person. I told this to you a couple of times. Gem gives us gems, right? Jewish education media gives us gems. We get every week a Sicha from the Rebbe with my encounter and a special moment and so on. So they did a collage on tshuva, and every Elul that comes around, with that 4 or 5 people. It's so personal. And I hope if they put up those videos, they got permission from the people, or they're in Ilma Emes, where you see people coming over to the Rebbe and saying to the Rebbe, I sinned. It's very serious. And the Rebbe answers each one so spontaneously. You can do tshuva and you're a new person. I remember particularly there's a woman. She puts her face into the Rebbe's face. They're this close. And she says, Rebbe, I hurt people. I think that's what she says. And the Rebbe says, now is Elul. You can do tshuva and you'll be a different person. Now the misnagdim shabakalacha the what's the lashon that Rebbe always brings? The rash abekibach. I'm quoting the wrong word. The misnagid in each one of us says, wait, in halacha it says that tshuva is effective for bein adam lamokim, between man and God. If you hurt another person, you have to fix it. And if you can't fix it, you can't fix it. And the Rebbe ignored that, however you understand in English of a dover. And she said to the Rebbe, I've hurt people, and the Rebbe says, now is Elul. And you're a naya b'shefenish, a new creation. And that's what the Rebbe is talking to here. Move on, which lays us to understand how precious and uplifted each day in the month of Elul. Okay, and we'll continue mitzvah Hashem.